What's up, everyone? Zero here. So I wanted to put it together a video because everybody is coming out with their wish lists for the season 5 reveal. And I wanted to go over something real quick. I think that the priority should not be on tempering, it shouldn't be on unique items, it shouldn't be on anything else except for the skills. And then also obviously the legendary aspects, because that falls right into place with it. So I didn't want to just make a video and just say, oh, this is what needs to be changed. I kind of wanted to give you an example of what I'm talking about. Take, for example, on the sorcerer, ice shards, right? So the ice shards tooltip says launch 5 ice shards that deal X amount of damage each, and you deal 25% increased damage to frozen enemies. If you use ice shards as an enchantment, ice shards automatically conjure and fly towards frozen enemies. The enhanced ice shard says ice shards have a 50% chance to ricochet to another enemy. Ice shards always ricochet off of frozen enemies. So at this point, I don't see anything that indicates it does anything by chance to frozen enemies. So what is this? What bonus are they referring to? While you have a barrier active, ice shards always receives its bonuses against frozen enemies. Doesn't it already always receive its bonuses towards frozen enemies? I don't know if I'm just reading it wrong or if I'm not understanding, but it says once again, deals 25% increased damage to frozen enemies. It doesn't say has a chance to deal extra damage to frozen enemies. This says ice shards have a 50% chance to ricochet to another enemy. Ice shards always ricochet off of frozen enemies. So which bonus is it referring to? Maybe I'm just reading it wrong, or I don't know if this has been brought up before, but this is really strange. So what exactly is it referring to? And then the other option here is hitting an enemy with 5 ice shards in a single cast make them vulnerable. So when you add the legendary aspect onto it, it obviously makes one enemy vulnerable, whatever enemies it passes through. I really feel, because this isn't just this skill. I mean, let's take Hydra, for example. So Hydra, the tooltip says you summon a 3-headed Hydra for 10 seconds, and then each head spits out fire, dealing X amount of damage, maximum 2 Hydras at a time. If you use it as an enchantment, after spending 200 mana, you get a 5-headed Hydra that spawns for 5 seconds. While healthy, your casts of Hydra gain 1 additional head, so it's extra damage. Now, the options that you have here are after you critically strike, you gain 30% critical strike chance. Or Hydra also burns enemies for 60% of its damage dealt over 6 seconds. I really just feel like if they were to put a little bit more effort into the skills, that you could just make all sorts of build diversity. What makes Path of Exile such a superior game isn't the graphics, it's not the gameplay, it's not the boss fights. What makes it a superior game is the amount of build diversity. I never get bored playing that game, ever. I go through the campaign multiple times, over and over and over again, because the progression of putting together a build in that game is so complex that it's almost impossible to get bored. There are so many different ways that you can put the skills together, and then with the support gems, it supports, you can get it to cast other spells. Like while you're casting a spell, they have something called cast while channeling or cast on critical strike that casts other spells while you're casting the spell that it's supporting. So what I would suggest, take for example ice shards, right? Or better yet, a better example would be this. So take Frozen Orb for an example. So Frozen Orb's explosion restores 5 mana when hitting a frozen enemy. I honestly don't see how that's going to help. I guess maybe if you hit multiple enemies, maybe 20 of them, it's going to put your mana back up to full, but that's if you hit them and if they're already frozen. What if they're not already frozen? Then what does it do? It doesn't do anything. So this is just a waste. Like nobody's honestly going to make a build around destructive Frozen Orb. So I would do this. This is my suggestion, and what I hope that they end up doing is something similar to this. So you take Frozen Orb, you give it the enhanced Frozen Orb, obviously. I would really do something a little bit different than this, but whatever. But on these two, what you could do is like frozen orb turns into a frost nova instead of an orb projectile. It turns into a nova that surrounds the character and has a X amount of chance to freeze the enemy. Or frozen orb deals X amount less damage, but fires 3 extra projectiles or something similar to that. Or you could do something similar with ice shards, right? Like ice shards fly out in a nova around the character or something like that. Or you can convert ice shards to something else, like convert it to a different element. Maybe converts ice shards into fire or something like that. I know that they already have firebolt, right? But I mean, I see that some people are putting together basic skill builds, but a lot of people don't play those. They don't really scale well into the end game because the basic skills just do no damage. I know that they've tried to fix that with a lot of the tempering and stuff. But for Hydra, you could do all sorts of stuff with Hydra. I mean, you could convert it into a frost Hydra, or like a lightning Hydra or something like that. Or maybe if they wanted to do something like make it like a shadow Hydra where it does shadow damage over time or something cool like that. The point I'm trying to make is that if they change the skills just a little bit, they could make the build diversity grow. Like if you look at most sorcerer builds, what are the 4 skills that you're going to see in there every time, right? You're going to see flame shield, of course. You're also going to see teleport. That's kind of mandatory. You're going to see ice armor a lot of the time. And then this one's kind of questionable. Sometimes you see frost nova, other times you don't. But for the most part, it's these 3 skills, right? So that leaves you what? Out of 6 skills, that leaves you 3. So now you only have 3 skills to work with. Like how cool would it be if you did something like this? When you cast ice shards, you have an X amount of chance to auto cast ice armor or something like that. Like this is a really good example. Like the enchantment effect on ball lightning is a really good example of what I'm talking about. So critical strikes have a 25% chance to spawn a static ball lightning. Now while I don't agree with ball lightning being static, it kind of makes it a useless skill unless it's orbiting around you or is a shot out as a projectile. Something like that, to where the skills can cast each other and you can make a synergy of skills go together. This is a really good example too, like with Firewall. This is a really good example. So you have a chance when dealing burning damage to spawn 2 firewalls. This is another example of something else you could do. But instead of making it just burning damage, you could make it like synergize with another element. And then you could make like all these different types of builds. And then obviously the legendary aspects you can play around with, because a lot of the legendary aspects are still pretty useless. Like you have your main ones, right? Like you have Juggernaut. They did a really good thing when they got rid of disobedience, because that was mandatory for every build. You had to have disobedience. So I'm glad that they capped the armor and that they took that out, because that made it less mandatory. I really feel like they should be focusing on build diversity in the next season, but probably not going to happen. Not going to lie. But I just wanted to put that out there as my number one thing on my wish list, because I really feel like it's not talked about. A lot of the other people that make videos, they want like tempering or new uniques, but the fundamental problem with this game is none of that stuff. I really feel like it's the skills. I really feel like the skills need an overhaul. They could even make it to where they just add 2 more options off the end and maybe just change some of the nodes, and then just add 2 more options to make it to make the skill different. How the skill works fundamentally, change it so that way you can make all sorts of different builds for each character. I don't know. Don't shit on me. That's just my opinion. I just wanted to put it out there just in case, they do watch it, maybe, or somebody watches it that has their ear. And then maybe we could start talking about that, because I really feel like that isn't talked about enough. And I know in the expansion that they tease new skills. I was really hoping that they would change this for the next season. That's all I got. If you like the videos, please consider subscribing and stay tuned for more content. There's plenty more to come. Peace.